All right, so like I said, we're going to finish with the obligatory final remarks for the semester, and we'll start with, I'll start with kind of the boilerplate ones, and then get a little more specific into the ones, the kind of the COVID specific ones after that. So, if you recall at the beginning of the semester, I told you you weren't going to be Bruce Lee when you left here. Hopefully that is a little more apparent now, right? And if you, I gave you a number, it was arbitrary, and it still is, but for the sake of the illustration, at the beginning of the semester I said, when you walked in here, you had, I don't know, a 30% chance of defending yourself, right? After you walk out of this class, you have, I don't know, a 62% chance or something like that. Again, my numbers are arbitrary, right? But whatever that number is, I think you'll agree there's a big difference in that number. I think we're a lot farther along in that process than where we started. And the question now is, what are you going to do with that 55, 62, whatever that percentage is? Okay? And it's worth noting, as I think we've stated elsewhere, that number is never going to be 100%. This is not about invincibility. Right? That's not going to happen. Okay? I almost got hit by a car walking here this morning, right? So, but let alone that, but then, as I always say, I could get shot by a 12-year-old walking to my car this afternoon. Okay? And so that that number is never going to be 100%. Okay? But hopefully you have. I hope that you had a good time in the class. I hope that we have grown a lot in different ways, both mentally and physically. And I say this to all my classes, but I genuinely believe it to be true. If you want to get that number higher, okay, if you want to get that, whatever, 62%, and then some of you are like, okay, I'll take my chances and that'll be done or whatever. But if you want to get that number higher, it does not get any easier to do martial arts and or self-defense training at the collegiate setting, and more specifically here at IU. That is one of the top 3-4 programs in the entire country, especially when it comes to breadth of offering. Ordinarily, right? The options that you have to take classes here and stuff like that. You have more leisure time now than you will at any other period in your life. You are in the primes of your lives, physically and intellectually, theory, and it's cheaper here. Right? The national average for instruction is usually like $130 a month. That's usually what comes with your contract, whatever. Okay. And of course, paid tuition, but flat rate tuition here. You've got over credit hours. You've got the clubs here like $50 a semester if they're active and stuff. Right? And so it does not get any easier. And there is an embarrassment of riches. Now, there are different ways that you could take that, take your path, if you will. You could, I recommended before, I highly recommend going into Aikido next. That is, there's a lot of review, there's a lot of crossover, but then there's stuff that builds based on what we did in here a lot. So I highly recommend that. As I've shared before, a lot of my last Aikido class had, like half of them were from self-defense classes. I had intermediate, it has been a while since I taught intermediate, but when I taught intermediate, like part of a good chunk of the class, it was basically, I think a third of the class were people that took my self-defense class. I didn't even know they took beginning Aikido when I saw them back in intermediate Aikido, right? So I would encourage you, that would be a great way to go. Unfortunately, that is one that was canceled this semester because it's a little more, it's not that much more hands-on than this. I guess it's a little more hands-on than this, but again, they canceled that one. If you're more focused on the ground fighting stuff and interest on the ground, that's Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Now, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is about maintaining position and then submitting people on the ground, choking, whatever else, and staying engaged on the ground to do that, versus us just getting out and getting away. So the context is a little different, but You're learning how to move on the ground, you're learning how to move other people on the ground, okay? Again, what you do with that would be very different than the sport and the idea of staying on the ground in jiu-jitsu, but it teaches you how to again, be proficient down there. And so that might be an option. Again, that is a class that was canceled this semester because, these last couple of weeks have shown it's pretty hard to do that without another person, right? Let alone doing other things like choking people and stuff like that. But there are other classes that are still going on. That's on the board, that's the Kali RD's classes, they're so weapons and stuff like that. Anyway, so hard to say what's going to be available or whatever moving forward the next couple of semesters, but do take advantage of, as I said before, if this is something you are remotely interested in, get your fill now. Take advantage of what we have available here, because it does not get any easier. And obviously I'm biased, but as far as martial arts or self-defense, great way to stay fit and do some make yourself a better person, but also get some other stuff done. I joke, but I don't. You go to the SRC or the fitness facilities or wherever, and people have got like their chemistry books while they're on the stepper or whatever else and stuff, and the elliptical machine or whatever. And I'm like, if your means of exercise is so boring that you bring homework with you to stay entertained while you do it, that seems a little off to me. Right? I want something a little more engaging and everything else, and certainly someone who's trying to attack you back or whatever is definitely engaging. Right? So again, I'm biased, but there are ways to do that. Moving forward, if you're not sure, interested. Like I said, it's hard to say exactly what's going to be going on next semester, but you can always reach out. And girl, my last class was moving to Indy, and what do I do? And I'm like, well, figure out where you are in Indy, and then I'll let you know. I don't know everybody in Indy, but I know places and stuff like that, and whatever, and different options and stuff. So there's a lot of different ways to take it. I'm doing, not just in the university setting, although like I said, there is an embarrassment of riches here, but whatever avenue you want to go, I'm doing a stress shooting class this weekend. If you're going to, handgun's part of your personal protection strategy, you need to go beyond your basic gun fundamentals class and get something that's actually pertinent to self-defense than just shooting cans in your backyard. If we're doing a mob and multiples, dealing with mobs and that type of situation, because that's kind of pertinent nowadays, right? I'm doing one of those in my school. So there are different ways you can even specialize and focus or whatever that's out there. But like I said, it's up to you what you do, but I would encourage you to get that number higher one way, shape, or form, right? Now, having said that, one of the big or important aspects of what we talked about is the mentality, is the mindsetting portion that goes along with the physical stuff. If I pop quizzed you and said, okay, do arms pin or do some of the situationals we talked about doing, like a month ago or whatever else, it might not go exactly as scripted as we drew it up if I hadn't put you on the spot and made you do it or whatever. And that used to be a source of consternation for me, but I've kind of softened on that a little bit in the sense that there is a maxim, and it is absolutely true. It's a saying that you hear that fighting is pick your number, 10-15% technique, and the rest of it is spirit, right? And there's something to be said for that also, right? You have to decide that you're worth fighting for, and you're going to fight until 10 seconds after you're dead. And as long as you kind of make that decision, then usually a lot of other things work out okay, right? If you have that mindset, right? So yeah, I'd like for it to be a little more technical and whatever, but and that's again, take Aikido, do the other stuff. We can get better at those things for sure, right? But as I said, hopefully, regardless if we do the physical skills, the other part, the other aspect that we really tried to inculcate in here is kind of the mind setting and that attitude and things like that. And that is something that we can continue to work on and develop and challenge ourselves to, even beyond this class and stuff like that. So I hope this class is a springboard for you in that way as well. Right? So I hope to see you in another class. If not, have a nice life. But thank you for pretty good work in this class. In particular with this semester and everything else, but I appreciate the hard work. You could have taken weightlifting, or I don't really know what's offered, but generally speaking, there are billiards or whatever. They could have taken a class that would. This one was a little more challenging and probably a little more out of our wheelhouse than a lot of other classes that you could have taken instead. And I do appreciate that. And I would argue part of what college is about is broadening your horizons and challenging yourself like that. But still, I appreciate the fact you did that. It is Tony Blauer, a rather more famous instructor, talks about, and I've heard this account various places or whatever, but he relates a story on a plane where it's late night, he's been teaching or whatever, coming back from a long weekend training people and stuff like that. Got a talkative lady on the plane beside him or whatever, and basically, it comes out that he does self-defense or whatever training, and she's like, "Oh, I've always wanted to do that," or I've always wanted something like that. Oh well, and he was a little cross, but he was also very honest. He's like, "No, you don't." She got pretty upset or whatever, at least initially. He's like, "No, you don't, because if you really wanted to, you would have done it by now." Right? You don't want to take self-defense. What you really want is to be assured that you're never going to have to need self-defense. You don't ever want to have to be in a situation that you should have needed or you should have had to have already done self-defense. And that's a good distinction. Okay? And so, thank you. I applaud you guys. You're farther along than, there's a lot of people that's as far as they got. You guys signed up for the class, you did this. Again, that by no means makes us invincible, but we're a lot farther along than those people that always wanted to do it, right? But really, what they really want is to give the assurance that they're never going to have to need it. Okay? You actually stepped out and go, "Well, I don't want to need it either, but I'd like the insurance if I do." Okay? And there's a similar maxim in martial arts that the white belt is still a higher rank than the person that's still on their couch. And that's, like I said, I appreciate the fact that you guys did something about it and started that journey. Right? And as I said before, I think it's a worthwhile journey. So I would encourage you to kind of keep on that path a lot more. But like I said, now more specifically to